faculty members, and budding engineers. On the eve of International Women's Day, the Department of Electrical Engineering YCET has organized a webinar on Women in Decision Making Positions. Is the world scenario changing? And the resource person for this webinar is Miss Pallavi Sareen, Editor in Chief, The Straight Line News. Department of Electrical Engineering was established in Yogananda College of Engineering and Technology in the year 2013. The department runs many activities so that the students get involved in addition to their academic curriculum. A woman is the full circle. Within her is the power to create, nurture, and transform. Women's Day is to celebrate women's achievements, raise awareness against bias, and take action for equality to create a better gender neutral society. It is a day when women across the globe are recognized and celebrated for playing various roles in the cultural, political, and socio-economic sections. Now, I would like to invite HOD Electrical Department, Engineer Lavnish Talwar, for the welcome address.
Thank you so much, Asli. Asli, it is audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Respected chief guest for the day, Miss Pallavi Sareen, Editor-in-Chief, The Straight Line News, Chief Coordinator, YCT Engineer Azmaji, Head of the departments of all departments of YCT, faculty members, participants not only in the UT of J&K but also from the country, and my dear students. A very good evening to all of you. I, Lavnish Talwar, Head of the Department Electrical, YCT, would heartily welcome you all on this day to celebrate International Women's Day. Today, the Department of Electrical Engineering organizes a webinar on the topic, Women in Decision-Making Positions, is the world scenario changing? Now, I extend heartfelt gratitude to welcome our resource person for the day webinar, Miss Pallavi Sareen, Editor-in-Chief, The Straight Line News. In spite her busy schedule, she accepted our invitation in a very short time and spare his precious time and deliver a talk on International Women's Day. Thank you so much, ma'am, for becoming this part of this webinar. I welcome Chief Coordinator YCT Engineer B.R. Verma, sir, who always support us and motivate us to do such type of activities. Thank you so much, sir. I welcome Dean Academics YCT Engineer Dinesh Gupta, sir, who always encourage us to do such type of activities. Sir, under your guidance, YCT has done so many activities, not in academics part, but also in extracurricular activities. Thank you so much, sir, to become this part of this webinar. I also welcome the special guest for the day, Engineer Amit Sharma, Principal ICS Polytechnic, who also spares his precious time and become this part of this webinar. Thank you so much, sir. I welcome all the heads of the departments, the faculty members of YCT, and all the participants from the country, and most important, all the students of YCT, that they will become the part of this webinar. Thank you all. I would also like to thank our technical team who provides the platform to do such type of activities. Now it's the time to introduce all of you our resource person of the day, Miss Pallavi Sareen, Editor-in-Chief, The Straight Line News. Actually, she needs no introduction. She has done a lot of in the field of journalism. International Women's Day is celebrated every year on March 8 to mark and celebrate the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of the woman and raise awareness about women equality, accelerate gender partiality. In this consent, the department has organized a webinar on International Women's Day, and the resource person for the International Women's Day is Miss Pallavi Sareen. Ms. Pallavi Sareen is an editor-in-chief of Straight Line News. She is based in Jammu and Kashmir, India, and has a bylines in Atlas Obicus, The Wire, Kashmir Life, Kashmir Times, among other national publications. She was selected as one of the nation media entrepreneur by Craig Newmark School of Journalism for starting the media venture, The Straight Line, at young age. She is a receptionist of UNESCO Public Media Alliance Media Action Nepal Fellowship, wherein she contributes towards framing the code of conduct for conflict reporting in South Asia. Along with the postgraduate degree in journalism from Central University of Jammu, she has also trained with Thomas Ritter Foundation and attended the Future News of Worldwide Conference by British Council. Her work has been cited in the books of Kashmir by prominent human rights lawyer as well as the BBC journalist. Thank you so much, ma'am. You spare the time and become this part of this webinar. I would also like to introduce all, and also with Pallavi ma'am, our Managing Director of Jambal Group of Educational Institutions, Engineer Renu Bangru ma'am, founder of Jambal Group of Institutions, a great visionary with a rich experience in the field of academics, an engineer, dynamic personality, and overall a woman who plays a prominent role in development of Jambal Group of Educational Institutions. Presently, with the cooperation of society, the group has grown over the years and it is presently managing the various institutes not in Jammu but also outside the Jammu. Presently, the group has managing the institutions like Institute of Management Sciences, National College of Education, Yogananda College of Engineering and Technology, Institute of Engineering and Computer Science, Tavi Engineering College, Tavi Polytechnic College, Cambridge International School, Jammu, Cambridge International School, Pathankot. I also welcome. Not but not least, I again welcome Pallavi ma'am to become this part of this webinar. Thank you so much for this program, ma'am. Over to Esli.
Thanks, sir, for your kind words. Now, I would like to request Dean Academics YCT Engineer Dinesh Gupta to say a few words about today's webinar.
Thank you, Azali. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Respected resource person, Miss Pallavi Sareen, Engineer B.R. Burma, Chief Coordinator, Yogananda College of Engineering and Technology, Engineer Amit Sharma, Principal IECS Polytechnic, Engineer Lavnish Talwar, HOD of the Electrical Department of Yogananda College of Engineering and Technology, faculty members, and my dear students. Good evening to all of you. I, Dinesh Gupta, feel honored and privileged to be part of this session. First of all, I would like to congratulate Electrical Department, especially Engineer Lavnish Talwar, HOD of Electrical Engineering Department, for organizing the webinar on women in decision-making positions on eve of International Women Day. I want to wish a happy Women Day to all the beautiful and courageous women of all over the world. It's the day dedicated to celebrate women's achievements in various social, political, and cultural fields. Some of them are Geeta Gopinath, the first Indian woman to assume the position of Chief Economist at IMF. Hima Das, first Indian athlete to win gold at IAAF World Under 20 Athletic Championship, and also she won gold and silver medal at Asian Games held at Jakarta. Mary Kom, she is the only woman to achieve #1 position and won 6 World Women Boxing Championships. Vandana Luthra, founder of BLCC. Mother Teresa, Nobel Peace Prize winner. Kalpana Chawla, first Indian woman reached in space. Kiran Bedi, former IPS officer. Sania Mirza, tennis player, became first Indian woman to be ranked #1 in double rankings. Saina Nehwal, first Indian woman to win a medal in badminton at Olympic Games and also attains #1 position in world rankings. And these are many more women achievers, and one of them is Miss Pallavi Sareen, Editor-in-Chief of the Straight Line News. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation. Once again, happy Women's Day, and over to Ajli.
Thank you very much, sir, for your kind words. Now, I would like to invite the resource person for the day, Miss Pallavi Sareen, to share her views about today's webinar.
Hello, everyone. And I thank everyone, Lavnish ji, and the entire department for organizing this webinar. Happy Women's Day to everyone who's listening to me. Before we get into the webinar, I would just like to make a point as to why I'm the right person to be talking about this. You already heard my introduction. I've been in the field of journalism for the past 4 to 5 years, and I've been contributing towards building a good news platform and giving voice to the voiceless and bringing the stories of the marginalized communities to the front. But when we talk about women in decision-making positions and whether or not the whole scenario is changing, I believe that my experience as the editor-in-chief of the Straight Line, where I am in the position to take decisions, editorial decisions, in the position to set the agenda for what people get to hear and what they don't, as well as the interactions that I've had with women journalists worldwide, whether they are reporters on the field, whether they are in editorial positions, and all the women, not just in South Asia, but the ones that are working in different countries, whether it is Mexico, whether it is Bangladesh. It is that experience from those shared conversations that makes me feel like I'm the right person to talk about this. And it's very important to talk about whether or not the world scenario is changing when it comes to women in decision making positions, because across the globe, we see that women make up like 50% of the population of Earth. And yet, when you see in key positions, whether it is in law, governance, or in journalism, or in different fields, you do find women participation, but the participation is very low at the top level. So I'll just like to share my screen so we can get into this. Hopefully, all of you are able to see it. Azli, if you can
Yeah,
just let me know.
yeah, ma'am, it's visible.
All right. So, what I wanted to talk about today was women in decision-making positions. Is the world scenario changing or not? Because we cannot keep the issues of women isolated towards just India. India is a developing nation, but even in developed nations, we sometimes see that women do not get equal opportunities when it comes to the gender pay gap. That's a reality. And I would start by saying, like, I'm sure all of you have heard the name Indra Nooyi. She was the CEO of PepsiCo. Why you have heard that name? Basically, because she was a woman CEO of a multinational company. You might not know the CEO that came before her, or you might not know the name of the CEO that came after her, but her name was popularized mainly because it's rare. It's rare for a woman to become a CEO of a multinational company. And when it happens, we find it inspiring, but then we move on into the world where I'll say 90% of the positions, the top positions are always held by men. And there's nothing wrong with that because that's how it's always been. Women not taking up as much space in the workplace as they should have. But now that the society is changing, there are a lot of things that need to be kept in mind. Firstly, that women are underrepresented in decision making positions worldwide. The World Economic Forum in 2016, it came up with some data which suggested that 59% of the gender gap has been closed worldwide. But even if that's the case, it will take another 170 years to close that gap. And that gap is not just in labor force participation of women, not just in like leadership positions, but in every sphere of life. Do you see men sharing as much responsibilities of home as women do? Very rare. Same way in workplace, do you see women participating as much as they should? Very few. If there's a job opening for, let's say, any kind of position, whether it is a management position, whether it is social media marketing, and you get 90 male applicants, you will get barely 10 to 15 female applicants. It's not because women do not wish to work or there is dearth of women who are educated who can work. It's basically that many women do not find out about these opportunities, and even the ones that do hesitate in applying because they have this in their head that we might not be capable of achieving as much as we think and the world thinks that you can. Same way, when we talk about India specifically, 48.5% of India's population is female. But when it comes to their presence in key decision making positions, you see in police force, in governance, in education, in healthcare, you see in public service, in government, in education, in except for when it comes to panchayats, because of reservation, you see more women participating in panchayat elections and becoming sarpanches. But even when they do participate and become a sarpanch, there are many a times we see in different villages that when you go to the village, it's not the female sarpanch who is managing the affairs of the village. It's actually the men in the family who are dealing with it. It happens, it is happening, and that is something that needs to be changed. There is something called the imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome basically makes you feel like all your achievements, you do not deserve them. And I think like women across the world face this imposter syndrome quite often, and that is what makes it very difficult for them to grab on the opportunities that is in front of them. If there's a position at the top level open for an executive, you will see more men lining up to be that executive than you will see women. Women will wait for their turn, and that is where the problem lies. If you're waiting for your turn and the window of opportunity is open, then somebody else is going to jump through it, and you're going to have to wait for a long, long time to even make your name there. Similarly, when we talk about Fortune 500, because that is a mark that is taken when it comes to corporates, that Fortune 500 companies, uh, when you check the Fortune 500 list, you will see that women CEOs only take up like 6.4% of the space. 6.4% is like it's marginal, it's negligible. Like you cannot say that 6.4% women CEOs are there, so the world scenario is changing. That's why, like, this is the case with just Fortune 500 companies, the biggest companies in the world, especially in America. But when you see about all the other small and medium enterprises, the informal workers, the other sectors, even in those sectors, the number, the percentage is like negligible. In India, last year, there were some changes. When we refer to the term unicorn is any startup that reaches the valuation of 1 billion. So when you talk about unicorns, then it's a company that has just reached the valuation of 1 billion. Last year in 2021, India had the most women-led startups that turned unicorn, that made the businesses into a $1 billion business. And some of the names up there you might be aware of, and some of the names up there you might not be aware of. But I would hope that some of you will screenshot it and try to find out about their stories, because these are inspirational women who have done something which is really hard to do, especially in a developing country like India. Last year, only 10% of the total startups that turned unicorn were led by women founders. But even then, it was the highest number till date. If you take up the data from 2015 to 2020, you will find out that there have been women CEOs, but the number of women CEOs that made their company reach the valuation of 1 billion, it was the highest in 2021. And those are some of the names up there. There's Rajoshi Ghosh, who has a startup called Hasura. There's Smita Deora, who has a startup called Lead School. Ghazal Alag, who has the startup called Mama Earth. You might have heard of it. You might have seen its advertisements. Mama Earth is recently just making the waves in the healthcare products and natural products. Ruchi Kala of business, and MobiQuick. I'm pretty sure like many of you have used the app MobiQuick, but many of you will not know that Upasana Taku is the starter. She's the founder of MobiQuick. Same way, Nykaa is recently been very popularized. Falguni Nair led this company, and it's a listed company now, and it turned unicorn. Ghazal Kalra, she started Rivigo, and Pristine Care is a name that is well known in healthcare. And Garima Sani, it's a female who's behind this company as well. Now, in India, because women entrepreneurs have been supported time and again, and there are various schemes from government that claim to support women entrepreneurs, what happens with that is that you are, of course, making things easier for women than they were before to acquire money, to acquire capital, so they can work on their business. But in some situations, it leads to a point where the female CEO is not the one who's actually taking decisions. She's just the one with her name on the papers, with her name on the rent deed, with her name on the company papers. But it's actually the men who are men in the family or men in the company who are making the decisions themselves. Even though it's like scientifically proven that women are as good at decision making as men are, despite the stereotypes that women make sometimes more emotional decisions, they're not as decisive as men, they're not as assertive as men. Despite all that, when you research, you find out that women are just as good at decision making, and sometimes even better, because throughout the years and throughout centuries, they've been tasked with multitasking, managing work, managing home, managing families, and like the brain is uh, it's conditioned into such a scenario where they can take decisions very quickly, very efficiently, and those decisions lead to a better result. Even then, because of this kind of stereotype that women make more emotional decisions, what happens is that you find more and more people who are not as willing to accept women in editorial positions, in leadership positions. Next, I would like to talk about gender equality and diversity. What would happen if more women take up the space, take up leadership, if more women take up the top level executive, the top level management? What would happen? Would it benefit the organizations and institutions, or would it not? Firstly, you have to like take it in this way that everybody knows the more hands you have on the job, the better it will be. If you want to build a wall and you have just 2 people building the wall, it will take a long time to build it. But if you have 4 people building it, the work will be done sooner. So when women take up nearly 50% of the population and you're ignoring them, then you're wasting the talent pool, you're wasting resources, you're not like getting a very vast number of like experiences. You're only getting selected voices, you're only getting selected perspectives. This can be seen even in the film industry. When earlier you used to watch movies, it was a hero on the poster that would sell a film. But now, even with the invent of OTT platforms, even that is changing. That is changing because now there are more female centric stories that are being put out there. Female directors are taking the initiative to tell more female centric stories. And it's not necessary that a female director will only tell a female centric story, but they're able to characterize a female better. For a certain set of products, let's say whether it is makeup, whether it is clothing, fashion, a lot of things, if you have a woman making decisions for all these brands, you will have a better output, you will have better benefits for your organization, because only a woman knows what goes inside a woman's head. If you have a man deciding how to, market women's products to women, they're more likely to make a mistake. Whether when it comes to women, they're more likely to be spot on when it comes to marketing, when it comes to taking decisions. So higher representation of women on boards or in decision making positions leads to those organizations that outperform the organizations that don't have that kind of representation. If you're negating women from positions of leadership, then you have a very narrow talent pool. Imagine that you have decided that I am only going to hire men in my company. If you only hire men in your company, then you're going to miss out on a huge talent pool. Maybe there are 3 candidates coming in front of you. 2 are men, 1 is a female. Those 2 are not as talented or not as qualified or not as creative as the woman is. But since you've decided that you're only going to hire men because they don't have family responsibilities, or because they're less of a burden, because they have more freedom, or any such thing that you might have in your head, then you're essentially narrowing down your talent pool and losing out on a much better candidate because of your own prejudices and because of your own biases. That is why in today's International Women's Day theme was break the bias. So that is the bias that they talk about breaking. Like, you already have some prejudices and some biases about women in workplace, and if you continue with those, you're going to miss out on a lot. In developed countries, when we do a survey, you find out that women are typically more educated than men. And there's a rationale behind that. The rationale is that even in developed countries, since the cost of living is very high, so the men in the family generally end up taking a lot of responsibility of the household, the responsibility to get financial gains, to manage the finances, to make a living. What happens with that is, if men at a younger age start earning a living, they do not have as much opportunity to get education. They don't have as much opportunity to go to colleges, go to universities and study. But the women, they are able to do so because the responsibility for managing the household or managing finances for the household has not been put on them. So in developed countries, women are typically more educated. They can add positive value to the economy. They're more efficient in managing things. And diversity itself is very beneficial, because if you have 5 people in a room, all of them have similar kind of ideology and similar kind of thoughts about a thing, that will happen only because you don't have diversity. when you have different people coming from different cultural backgrounds, different ethnicities, different genders, they will bring a lot on the plate. They will bring their experiences and their voices and their entire background with them. So diversity in itself can make an organization more vibrant and give more color to whatever you're trying to do. Efficiency gains, because women are, like, in developed countries, they're highly qualified. Even in developing countries, if women are not as qualified, like some of them are, some of them don't get that opportunity. But what happens is they might have other skills. They might be better at management. They might be more responsible. They might not get easily corrupted. They might have other talents that just end up getting ignored because the responsibilities that should essentially be shared at home are not being shared. So you see less women taking up leadership positions because they believe that if we take up a leadership position, if we become a CEO of a company, this is going to take time away from my family. And do you want to compromise on that? Some women don't. Some women who do wish to compromise on that do not have that kind of family support wherein they will have a husband or a father who will be taking care of the entire household so they can make a space for themselves. Now, when it comes to women becoming leaders, when women become leaders, they provide a different set of skills, imaginative perspectives, and it is the cultural differences between the genders that can bring more effective solutions. As far as the challenges for female leaders, because things have never been easy, otherwise they would have happened by now. If you just count, this will be the benefit if women become leaders, and this will be the benefit if women become leaders, then why hasn't it happened yet? What stops it from happening? The main challenge for female leaders, especially, is that the men dominating the workspace. Sometimes they negate you by not considering your voice as authentic. Like, I do make a joke about this, that if I tell you that the sky is blue, you will not listen to me, but you will find a male geologist who will tell you that the sky is blue and you will believe him. Now, you may believe him because he's a geologist, or you may believe him because he's a man, but you did not believe me when I said that the sky is blue because you do not consider my voice as just as important. So that is a problem in many workspaces where the same ideas that the female work staff will have are often negated as thinking that how can they have something interesting to say? How can they have an effective solution to it? That is essentially because it is the men who are dominating the workspace, and you do not see the women coming in solidarity with each other in support of the idea. So if there's a vote in a boardroom as to whether or not you should go with campaign A or campaign B, and it's 5 men in the room who are like supporting one male's idea, and there's just one female on the side with her idea maybe better, but there's no one to support her, then the idea is going to get ditched. Similarly, there's a lack of equal opportunity and bigger gender pay gap. Gender pay gap is essentially when you get paid less to do exactly the same work. And this happens in film industry. You see male actors and female actresses, there's a huge gender pay gap. The actresses, despite the fact that they're doing the same work, they're also acting in the film, they get paid less than the men in the film. And it's been talked about repeatedly on different platforms. This gender pay gap, one would assume that it's lessening over the years as we get more educated, as we get more modernized. But the fact is that this gender pay gap essentially is almost the same as it used to be. That's like if you see a male driving a car, driving a taxi, you pay him 200 bucks. But if you see a female driving a taxi, you pay her 150 bucks for the same number, same distance, for the same work. It doesn't make sense, but it happens. Same way, another challenge for female leaders is that if they take on a full-time role in their office, it may take them 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours, 15 hours, 18 hours in the day to manage their work. And some females are unable to take that because there's the stress of raising your own family as well. The entire burden of raising a family, of managing the household, often falls on the woman. Even in most modernized homes with really progressive people, with really progressive thinking, you would see that there's inherent discrimination when it comes to managing household chores and household duties. You would tell your daughter that bring dinner for your brother because it's a girl's job to handle the kitchen. So these are the things that when you see in your homes, you don't realize that you're contributing to the problem and you're not adding to the solution. How many husbands help out their wives in the kitchen? I'm not talking about if the girl is a housewife and the guy goes out to earn a living. It's when both are working. If both of you are working, how many families, couples share the household responsibilities equally at home? No, because generally men feel entitled that women should do the household chores. They should handle the baby, they should handle the household responsibilities. And my sole responsibility is just to go out and earn. Because earlier it used to happen that way, that kind of thinking still hasn't changed. So patriarchal thinking is essentially a big challenge for female leaders across the globe, and this is not just in Indian society or South Asian society. It happens across the globe. This is one thing that is very common. Women that have a burden of their biological clock ticking on their head 24/7, especially when they reach a certain age. And it's after that that they have to take a decision whether to progress with their career or whether to progress with their family. And more often than not, women end up choosing the family because otherwise there's an entire society thinking that they made the wrong choice if they're choosing to be very ambitious. Same way, there's the wrong stereotype of women being more emotional and less decisive than men. Even though, I'll give you an example. When you watch a movie, a horror movie, you'll often see a female side character saying, "What should we do now?" In the reality, that will never happen. In any crisis situation, you would see that you would prefer talking to a female about what you should do than you would to a male. Why? Because she can handle pressure, she can handle tough situations, she can multitask, she is quick at thinking, she is a very efficient decision maker. But because of the stereotype that women are essentially more emotional, you believe that she might not be able to take the right decision. And it is this stereotype which is another main challenge for female leaders. So I have also attached this story in the Independent, which showed that how analysts were finding that girls are better equipped for the workplace and are more capable of coping up with modern ways of working. They're better at problem solving, they're better at decision making, and at a global level, they can contribute more. Now, when it comes to media, because this is a field that I personally belong to, it would be difficult not to talk about it. Reuters Institute, it does a survey every year and it tries to find out whether there is a rise in the number of women journalists across the globe and whether there is a rise among women editors across the globe. So in this particular survey, they surveyed at least 12 markets, and they found that majority of the top editors in the top leading newspapers or news outlets in the particular 12 markets, they were men. And that was true even in countries where women journalists were more in number than male journalists. Even then, there were more women reporters on the ground, women anchors, hosts, panelists, but they were not in editorial positions where they could decide what could go on the show and what could not. In South Africa only, like 62% of the journalists and 60% of the top editors were women. But in other countries, it was seen that the number of female editorial positions was very few. In 10 out of 12 markets, there were more women working as journalists than they were among top editors. So you would have a female journalist who covers an issue that is very close to her heart, that is very important, that is a woman issue, and it goes to an editor who does not understand the issue as finely as a woman editor would. What happens if the story gets killed? What happens if the story never sees the light of the day? It can happen especially when you don't have as many women taking up the editorial positions, taking up the leadership stage. When we talk about women in media today, and you can look around in India, you will see there are many women on the field doing fantastic job, bringing out great stories, working really hard, making a name for themselves, and they're doing some commendable work really, especially in digital media. But when you look behind the camera and you try to find out how many of these women actually own the platform where they're the face, very few. How many of these women actually own the channel or the newspaper position where women need to take up more space? It's not that you do not have a platform to share your voice. You can always find a platform to share your voice, especially in today's social media age. But it's about whether or not your decision will make an impact. I'll give you a small example. Like when it comes to, say, any TV channel, a reporter brings a story. It is you who will decide whether the story will run or not. That is the power that you would need. That is the decision making position that you would want to be in. And essentially, like I mentioned before, if we go at the same pace that we are going at today, it will take more than 170 years to close that gap. Another major example is one of the modern democracies that is most talked about, that always talks about women's rights here and there, that talks about equal opportunities for women. I'm talking about United States of America. It took them more than 200 years to have their first female vice president, that is Kamala Harris. Till date, they do not have a female president. If that is true for one of the modern democracies like United States of America, that talks so much about equal opportunities for women, so much about women in workplace, women in strong positions, women in leadership, women in politics, and every second or third research that is done about women in decision making, you will find that the source of that information, the source of that survey is based somewhere in America, where they make grand claims about how it is in developing nations and how oppressed women are in developing nations. But even then, you will see more women leaders in politics who have reached a certain stage in South Asia than you would in America, than you would in the so-called developed nations. Especially in developed nations, it is because the discrimination there is harder to find. It is harder to point out. When you have the laws equal for all, when you have a kind of setup where you can't arguably mention how and why the discrimination is happening, then it is very hard to point out. But when you look at facts, like when you look at numbers, how many CEOs, how many congresswomen, how many politicians, how many women in leadership roles, how many women editors, when you look at numbers, it's only then that you start to see that there is some discrimination, there is some oppression, which is why women are not taking as much space in leadership positions and the top level as they should. 50% of the population, and you would expect at least 50% of the space, but they don't even get 30% or 40%. And that is where the discrimination lies. I'll conclude by saying just that the world scenario is changing, but it's not changing at the pace which it should. Like, it should happen faster. It should happen if we imbibe all these things in our heads and make sure that we give women as much opportunity as they need, and women especially take up those opportunities instead of waiting for their turn. Centuries of patriarchal thinking, it will take years to undo. And women should take initiative to lead the way. They should not wait for opportunities to come their way. And I've attached a picture of Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand. She's a very inspiring woman. And she's also one of the women in politics who gave birth while in office. While in office, I mean, as in while she was the Prime Minister of New Zealand. So she's an example of how you can manage work-life balance well, how you can make sure that whatever the world expects from you, you can deliver, you can do better, and you can make sure that all those people who doubt you or have these prejudices against you or have these biases against you get a reason to stop being biased. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such precious words and your lovely presentation. We gained a lot of knowledge and enjoyed a lot. It is true that women are the real architects of the society. They're the most beautiful and gorgeous creatures in the whole world. An empowered woman is the most powerful beyond measure and beautiful beyond description. Now, finally, I would like to invite Engineer Lavnish Talwar for the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, as it is audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. So on the behalf of entire team of Yogananda College of Engineering and Technology and from the Department of Electrical Engineering, it's a time to propose a formal vote of thanks. So first of all, I would like to propose the formal vote of thanks our esteemed chief guest for the day, Miss Pallavi Sareen, that she delivered such a beautiful talk on International Women's Day. She delivered the very facts about the International Women's Day. So thank you so much, ma'am, once again you can spare the time with us and become the part of this YCT program. I know you are very much busy in your daily routine, daily reporting and all that. But in spite of that thing, you spare some precious time and become the part of this webinar program. Thank you so much, ma'am. On the behalf of entire team of Yogananda College of Engineering and Technology, from the management side, from the director side, from the dean side, and all the faculty members of the department, ma'am. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank our Chief Coordinator Engineer B.R. Verma sir, who joined this webinar and become the part of this webinar. Thank you so much, sir. I would also like to thank the Dean Academics YCT Engineer Dinesh Gupta sir, who also spares his valuable time and become this part of webinar. I would also like to special thanks to the the special guest of the day, Engineer Amit Sharma, Principal ICS Polytechnic, that they will also become this part of this webinar program. I know all are worked in a morning work, and this time they are coming back from their routine work and are at home. But instead of that thing, they have joined this webinar. Thank you so much, sir. I would also like to thank all the participants across the country that they will join this webinar program. Last but not the least, I would also like to thank our technical team, especially Engineer Robin sir, who will provide this Zoom platform so that we conduct this type of webinar. So thank you so much once again from the entire team of Yogananda College of Engineering and Technology, those who are joining this webinar. So before leaving this platform, I would also request to all the participants to please turn on your videos for a short while so that we have a group photograph. I request all the participants to please turn on your videos for a short moment so that we can take some good photograph. Yasmin, when it is took, you can please intimate me. Those who are not joining, please, I request once again, please turn on your videos so that we can take a group photograph. Just a minute, I will also took one photograph. I think it's done. So thank you so much. And there is one information to all the participants that in the starting of the webinar, I will told you that the certificate link will be shared in the chat box. So certificate link will be shared in the chat box of this platform. So I request all the participants to please fill the feedback form or the certificate link for getting the certification. So once again, thank you so much, Pallavi ma'am, to join this webinar and give a beautiful talk on this. Thank you so much, ma'am.